Welcome to Threads of Enlightenment, a podcast devoted to helping you overcome challenges in your life that prevent you from becoming the best version of yourself. Each episode features interviews with people from all walks of life about their journey of self-development and the principles they utilize to overcome their fears to achieve their desired outcome. Ready to be enlightened? Here's your host, Ken Primus.
Welcome to another episode of Threads of Enlightenment. As usual, guys, this is one of my favorite spaces to welcome our guests and to honor them for a couple of things I know that is very expensive according to my eyes. Time. That time, 24 hours, that time clock is the same. Every day you get up, every day you go to bed, it's the same for every man and every woman. What you do within that 24 hours will tell us a lot about your lifestyle and who you are. The other is the journey. The journey is a powerful creator. It created the individual that is before us. And Osmond is here before us, and he has been gifted with some insight, knowledge, and wisdom due to his journey. And so we have access to that today via that he's here to share so that you and I can become better human spirits while we are here on this planet. Welcome to Threads of Enlightenment. Thank you so much for coming.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for having me here. I really love being here. I really appreciate being here. And I can't wait to get started and talk about something that's very, very important these days.
Excellent. Excellent. I'm excited, man. One of the very first questions I ask everyone is how do they serve mankind? Because I want the world, not just the listener, I want the world to understand that we didn't come here to just work and die, man. You came here with an assignment, and once you locate your assignment, there's happiness there, there's joy there, there's all kinds of stuff. So that's why I'm trying to make you guys aware to start looking for it. It's inside of you. It'll begin to pull you to get there. So how do you serve mankind?
Yes. How do I serve mankind? I serve mankind by teaching people about how to defeat their loneliness these days, because there is a raging loneliness epidemic going on, and it's getting worse and worse by the day. And that's why I'm here to help you, everyone who's listening, myself, everyone really, defeat their loneliness and to connect better with the people, because that's what I believe is lacking in today's society.
I love that, because it is when COVID came on, one of the things that we heard from a lot of people, because they became isolated from others, and that loneliness, if you will, exploded to a degree that is still epidemic level right now, as you're stating. And so I'm glad someone has the insight to come and address this, because there's a lot of people, it's affecting younger people as well. And even with the onset, I've been reading some data, but with the onset of social media, how the young kids are extremely lonely because of even that. And so I'm excited to have this conversation. One of the very first things that we start off, I love this assignment because it is such a necessary thing. One of the first things that we do, we try to time travel and go back into time via the memory and revisit a couple of places where we reside, because I want to know, how did you get to this particular assignment? So we want to investigate you. One of the first places that we hang out for a few years is with these two people that are called mom and dad. And we are deposited into this pod, if you will, and we call it here on this planet the family. What was your family unit like?
Yeah, very, very interesting question, actually. So, yes, I want to say I'm a good mix and a hybrid between both of my mother and my father. As I'm aging and as I'm getting more and more of an adult, I keep seeing more of myself in my mother, actually, instead of my father, which is quite curious. I don't know how things are where you're from, but, where I grew up, things were like, yeah, you're the firstborn son, you're going to be more like your dad, and your other siblings are going to be more like your mom, and so on. But no, I keep finding myself being more and more like my mom, actually. I do have traits from my father, but I gravitate more towards my mom, actually, which is quite interesting for so many reasons.
Was it, why do you think that? What do you feel within yourself that caused you to gravitate towards mom more so than dad? What was it that you think is an identifier that caused that type of gravitation, if you will.
Yeah, interesting. Because my mom worked in home care and nursing and so on, and she worked shift-based jobs.
Hmm.
I've worked shift-based jobs as well, and it was typical for my mom to stay up late and perhaps cook something and do whatever kind of project that needed to be done in the
Yeah.
house. And I find myself doing the same thing. Because if there is something that needs to be done, I want to do it right there, right then. It doesn't matter if it takes all night. If I
Yeah.
need to pull all nighters to do something, then I'm gonna do it because to me that just makes sense. I don't
Hmm.
care if I can't sleep that night because there's always another night, right?
Yeah.
Things need to be done. Well, when I've been around my father, he's like, "No, it's late. It's 9 p.m. We need to go to sleep. We can do the
Yeah.
rest tomorrow," right? So
Uh-huh.
there's that, and there's also the way that I'm connecting with other people. I want to say I'm more sociable than
Yeah.
and eager and willing to connect with more people, especially new people, than a
Hmm.
lot of other family members. And I see that same pattern in my mother. So
Yeah.
I think that's why really I haven't. It was actually it threw me a bit that question, but
Yeah.
it was interesting. Interesting
I
to see.
think your mom being a nurse, if you will, one of the most noblest professions there is on this planet, because my mother also was a nurse, and I
Yeah,
know the cost of that profession. And but those type people are very special in the
yeah,
sense that they are more open-minded. I found that my mom was a little more open-minded in certain things and much more personable, if you will. And
yeah,
my dad was army trained, cop trained, military trained, and he was totally different. He's more of the straight liner, the disciplined type of individual. And
yeah,
that's because of his programming. He was programmed that way
yeah.
by that entity that he was a part of as a young man. And so I get it. So here you are, you've gravitated a little towards mom, and you find yourself doing the same thing when you were a young individual. What was your relationship towards, because as we are growing, we start, one of the very first things that we start to do is build a relationship. We have relationships with mom and dad, but we also, as we're growing, we start to independently build our own relationship. What was your relationships like with others? How were you beginning to build your relationship? How was it friendly? What was it, your mo, if you will, when you began to start building yours?
Yeah, interesting again, because this relates 100% to what I was saying, in the beginning in the introduction. I
Yeah.
didn't have many relationships when I was growing up because I was picked on and bullied and well, whatever. I was sort of like the quiet, shy kid that nobody wanted to talk to at school, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, and I'm from a small town. I think there's about 700 or 800 people or so living there. Yeah, so there's kind of like only one culture, one main group of people, if you will. There weren't other schools that I could move to. There was only the one school. Everybody knew everybody, right? So word spread
Yeah.
fast. When you get ousted in a small society, you're ousted as a whole in the whole community. Pretty
Yeah.
much. So yeah. No, so I spent a lot of my childhood obviously feeling and being lonely, of course.
Yeah.
So I did have some relationships. I had some cousins actually with
Hmm.
whom I had good relationships with, but they lived in a different part of the country. So I saw
Yeah.
them maybe 2 or 3 times a year. That was it. And I grew up during the days we didn't have social media or anything. I
Yeah.
couldn't even phone call them, right? So it was
Yeah.
like, yeah, if you want to see John, my cousin, then you're going to have to, now it's summer, then you're going to have to wait until Christmas or maybe Easter next year.
Yeah.
Whatever. You're going to have to wait half a year. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I did, like I said, I did have some relationships, but they were, I want to say they were superficial because I had some playmates or classmates that would
Yeah.
oftentimes kind of like leave me alone. It's funny. I call it analogic ghosting or
Yeah.
analogically ghost someone, meaning
Yeah.
let's meet up and play football. soccer for you
Hmm.
Americans at this pitch at, let's say, 5 p.m. after school, then,
Yeah,
we're going to do that. Okay, so I go there and I show up at 5 p.m. and there's no one there because they've
yeah,
all done something. I mean, I can
right.
smile about that now, but for a long time, that was something that I was struggling with, right? Being left
Yeah.
outside and so on. So, yeah, I did have some relationships, but they were far and few in between.
Yeah, that's a very traumatic experience for a young individual to experience, especially in a small town, because that information and that data travels pretty fast.
Yeah,
In a couple of seconds, the entire town and village knows what just happened. And for a child to walk in that traumatic thing, I am sure it must have been a hard thing to walk with. But here you are standing, so I want to investigate that because that I'm sure has made you even a stronger individual. As they're doing that, as you said, ghosting you in that sense, the news going around, how did your relationship in the house, because I'm sure mom and dad, maybe mom hears this story as well, and dad, how were they relating to you with that information once they got it? How did they look at you in that sense?
yeah, very good, very interesting question again. I do want to point out something that you said before answering that question, because you said, "Here I am." Think about
Yeah,
that. So
yeah,
that's so powerful, because
yeah,
this
yeah.
this doesn't apply to me, but it applies to everyone. Everyone,
Hmm.
because I'm sure there's someone out there who's gone through way more trauma than I had. I mean, I was picked on, I was beat up, I was called names, never picked for games. That's fine. But there's someone out there who's been through real trauma, excessive trauma, and here I am still. Guess what? What a message that sends to the bullies and to everyone around them. Guess what? You couldn't defeat my ass. I'm still
Yeah,
here. You lost, I won. That's so
yeah,
powerful right there.
yeah.
But anyway, back to your question. Yeah. So I want to say my parents probably told, or reached out to the teachers and the other parents of the other kids and so on, because they clearly could see that I didn't connect well with the other kids. But they didn't do enough, in my opinion. That's my
Yeah.
fair criticism, right? Because I always felt like there was nobody who had my back,
Get
right?
back.
Because
Yeah.
I would oftentimes get into fistcuffs and fights and whatever. When kids are having a fight and so on.
Yeah.
So I would always get blamed for that. They would tell me, like, you can't be that aggressive, you can't start fights, you can't do this or that, whatever. And I would tell them, yeah, but I'm just standing up for myself, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But that wasn't a thing, because I was being told to turn the other cheek,
Wow.
like Jesus teaches.
Yeah.
And you mentioned religion. It's quite interesting, because whilst there indeed is a time and a place to turn the other cheek, that's not in the schoolyard when you're getting bullied. Then it's time to
Hmm.
stand up for yourself and let
Oh
them know
yeah.
where boundaries go, in my
Yeah.
opinion. So
Well, there are
yeah,
times in the
yeah,
Bible where people were killing people were we saw wars and the children of God's people were killing people all over the place. So there's a time and place for everything, man.
perfect. I mean, King
Yeah.
David went around and slaughtered people. He went on a
Yeah.
killing spree.
Yeah, I mean, he to be honest, you think about Paul the apostle, he was killing Stephen when Stephen was stoned. He was right there watching and cheering it on. So these guys and all these
Yeah,
guys got saved and changed the world. So
yeah,
there's a time and place. Ecclesiastic says there's a time and place and time and seasons for everything.
yep,
There's a time to turn the cheek and there's a time to kick ass, as you say,
yep.
man. So yeah, I totally agree. So here you are, you felt that mom and dad didn't do enough, and you're moving, you're growing up, if you will, and you are getting older and you're looking towards heading out of your small town. How did that look? Did it look that you can exit through college, or did it look like you could exit through work? Which direction did you take?
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I had to exit through college, or actually through
Hmm.
high school, because there
Yeah.
was no high school in my town. So I had to
Yeah.
move either way. So in Norway, when you're 16, you start high school, and high school lasts for 3 years. So from
Hmm.
16 till 19, usually you're in high school. So that's when I had to move. And then
Yeah.
later on, through college, military service, and so on. But yeah, I mean, I couldn't wait to move, obviously.
Yeah.
Get out there in the world and
Yeah.
discover and, meet new people. Because I always had that in me. I'm like, I'm so sick and tired of these faces. They keep calling me names. They don't like me, whatever. What am I doing here? Let me just leave,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. And when you left and you got into your new location, new crew, if you will,
Yeah.
what happened there? Were you accepted? Were you a part of it, or did the same theme, that same thread continue while you were in high school?
So it's actually interesting again, because I wasn't always a believer. At that time I was an atheist or an
Yeah.
agnostic or whatever, and I didn't like religion a lot.
Yeah.
And I ended up in a Christian high school. Christians are together. These guys are normal and they like me. And they're not,
Yeah.
excluding me for not believing in God or not doing whatever activity they want me to do. Right?
Yeah.
So here I am at age 18. I'm finally being included. I'm finally making some friends. I'm finally hanging out and having a good time. But there's
Yeah.
something missing because you know how children have learned these social customs and ways of interacting with each other and so on.
Hmm.
I kind of didn't have that
Yeah.
because I didn't, I hadn't had any friends for 11 years virtually. Because
Yeah.
from age 7, when I started school, until age 18, 11 years,
Hmm.
I kind of didn't have any friends. So
Yeah.
I had to sort of like learn that as well. Right?
Wow. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I had a fantastic year, fantastic third year in
Yeah.
high school. Met a lot
Yeah.
of brilliant people and a lot of nice people.
That is awesome, man. That when you explained the acceptance piece, you see that smile on your face, and you're beginning to see once you that switch, a little switch is happening slowly. And the reason why I asked that question and I laughed was because we are to a degree e- energetic in the sense that my body is at a rate of speed versus something else, but the energy of the body and the belief system that we carry with us sometimes go before us. And it doesn't matter where we go, you think you're running from it, but here you are, you're bringing the whole mindset because you still have that old program that is with you, and so you tend to gravitate towards that particular thing. And that's why you see someone, when their parents are alcoholic or abusive, they will end up dating someone that is alcoholic and abusive because that's familiar to them. There is a little comfort there and so forth, and that energy and mindset is there until they began to switch it around. So that's why when you said that you had even that type of behavior in a Christian, I started laughing, which was actually even more funny. Being a Christian myself, I just find it very, very funny. So here you are, man. You're 18, a great year, and that's when the conversation basically starts with moving forward into college and stuff like that. Which field did you pick, and why did you pick
Yeah.
it?
Yes. So I picked a civil engineering field in college
Hmm.
simply because I knew that would land me a great job. That was it. That was my main motivation. I was thinking like that when I was 16, 17 years old. I spent a
Yeah.
grand total of 6 years, I think, pondering and reflecting upon which direction I would go into college. So I
Wow.
graduated as a civil engineer in technical geology. I think that's
Yeah.
the closest term I could label it in English. I specialized within tunneling, tunnel construction,
Yeah.
of all things.
Hmm.
Because
Wow.
I found it to be very, very interesting, actually.
Yeah.
Excavating black holes in a
Hmm.
mountain.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's a fascinating thing, even for a young individual to begin to gravitate towards it. There are other fields out there that could make money.
Yeah.
Why did you pick that one? What was it that was attractive to you to pick that one?
Yeah. So initially I was going to go to the field of money. Actually, I was going to study oil and drilling technology and so on.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
then there was a professor at the university in one of the classes who he spoke with this genuine conviction and this energy
Yeah.
and this excitement about rocks and tunnels and landmass geology. And
Yeah.
I just became captivated. It was so interesting hearing him talk. So I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm sitting there in class and I'm going, you know what? I want to specialize within landmass geology and tunnels instead, because that looks way more fun than just, drilling oil. Even if I make
Yeah.
less money, right? Because
Yeah. Yeah.
money wasn't the main objective. And as a side note, money should never be the main objective. It's a tool, it's
Yeah.
an important tool, but it should never be the main objective of your life, because money for money's sake corrupts, as we've
Mhm.
seen over and over again.
Yeah, and there's a principle that talks about it. It's fleeting too. It'll always fly away from you if you're just
Yeah.
chasing that alone. So there are other things to change that will give you and bring the money to you. So yeah. So here you are. You got a chance. I loved asking that question because I wanted to probe a little to find out what was the genesis that caused that. Because there's always, as benign as it sounds, there's always something that is going to push us towards that particular field. Because what you're talking about is very specific field. I mean, just very limited in approach. And so that's when I probed that question. You said, yeah, it was a teacher that. So you had someone that sparked it within you and made that very excited, and excitement caused inside of you, and you moved that way. And the reason why I wanted to pull those things out is I'm trying to show people that these are the little things that happen, those little moments of excitement. And those that are listening to us, and you feel that little excitement in you concerning this interview, and listening to us, that little is something to tell you to make a decision. You need to get in touch with him. Why? Because I'm telling you, that little excitement, because he got that little excitement, he made a decision, an internal decision and he said, I'm going to do this. And look what he did. He went and he accomplished what he did. And so the very same thing happens to you and I on a spiritual level as well. So go ahead, when you feel that little excitement, that's a clue to you that this is where you ought to be heading. So you got your degree, you're out. Your first assignment, what did you do?
Yeah, so I started out as a tunneling construction engineer, an on-site engineer. Basically, my job was to assess the rock mass and determine the strength and stability of the rock mass, and then determine the need for support, like rock bolts, sprayed concrete, and all that stuff. I don't think I want to say there's no one of your listeners who actually knows what goes on inside a tunnel that's excavated, because it's such a niche specific
Very
field,
specific.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So I could sit there and geek out all day about what goes on, because I actually found it to be interesting. But basically, my job was there to just determine the need for support in the tunnel, because otherwise the tunnel falls down, right? Yes. And it's funny that you're mentioning this. There was an incident that actually sparked the very need for people like me, because a year or so before I started studying at the university, there was a large rock that fell down from the tunnel ceiling all the way down and almost hit a car. I think there was a car that had passed 2 seconds before that rock fell. And it was a big rock. It was, I don't know how big. It must have been like 60 or 70 or 80 foot long or something like that. It was crazy. So it would have killed anyone who was there, right? Everything, right? And so that just goes to show you that if there aren't people who are qualified and competent to do this sort of job, then bad accidents can happen, potentially. So that's why I like to say, when I was doing this stuff, that, hey, I'm in the business of saving lives. I save lives. Because if I can't do my job, y'all are getting killed. Mm-hmm. Well, you could get killed.
Yeah. So after you began to live life, as you said, because we're moving, progressing towards our independence now. You left your
Yeah.
town, your small little town, and you went to college. You're out. Did you go into the military from after college, or how did you end up there?
Oh yeah, that was actually before college. So it was
Oh,
right
okay.
after I graduated high school. Yes, I
Okay.
I went into the military. I served there for a year. I just did that because I didn't know what else to do, to be honest. Because I was like,
Yeah.
after college, I'm still trying to find my way in the world.
Yeah.
I'm still trying, and I'm still working on the whole loneliness issue from when I was a child, right?
Yeah.
And serving in the military would also aid me to get into the university, because you get these extra points as a score of
Yeah.
your spreadsheet with all your grades and so on. So that would help. And also, I was just curious about what the military was. But to me, it was more like a gap year, to be honest, because
Yeah.
I'm not a military guy inherently, so I didn't find it fun or interesting. But it's quite funny because I don't know how well this will connect with your audience, but let's try. In the English speaking world, there are different accents, right? Which one of the English accents to you personally is the most difficult to understand? I'm curious. I'm just asking.
Yeah. For me, it's certain parts of England. There's so many different dialects within that country. There's some, I'll give you an example. I was in part of England, Newcastle.
Okay.
And
Jordi.
yeah, I'm
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Is this in English? What do they say? Yeah, I heard that from a lot of Americans when they're in England or the UK that they speak. So, they have such difficult dialects and accents over there. So here's the
yeah,
thing. We got dialects in Norway too. We call them dialects, by the way.
hmm
And they're
yeah,
very, very pronounced. Very, very pronounced. And I happen to speak the most difficult of all. It's
hmm
unofficially been labeled as the most arcane, difficult to understand, whatever, because I pronounce words differently. I use different words instead of the regular words and so on. And
yeah,
so the reason I'm bringing this up is in the military, the guys would, of course, make fun of me and,
yeah,
imitate my accent and so on. And in the beginning, that annoyed me, of course, because,
yeah,
I was just a young kid. But then I decided to double down and to actually speak even more and even more
hmm
broad, right? And
yeah,
thicker. And during the course of 3 or 4 months, I saw how these people, the other people in the military, started to respect me for that. Because after a while,
yeah,
they stopped mocking me. They stopped imitating me. They're like, this guy's serious about his dialect. But whatever we're saying,
yeah,
whatever we're doing, it doesn't help. And to this day, my accent, my dialect is sort of like my identity, if you will, my
yeah,
mark, sort of like.
yeah,
Because
yeah,
people might not remember my name, but they remember my dialect. That's
yeah,
sort of like the running joke around me. And I bring this up because there's obviously other people from my small town where I grew up who have also moved on, left the place and so on, but they change their accents because they're so embarrassed and it's so tough to them to keep it intact because they get tired of repeating themselves. They get tired of being misunderstood and all of that. And I think that my strength lies in the fact that for so many years, I was put on the sidelines feeling alone. And that gave me the
yeah,
strength to actually maintain what was important to me, namely keeping my
hmm
local accent alive, even
yeah,
if I'm amidst, people from other places in the country.
yeah. And I want to talk now about the loneliness piece, because as you're saying, here in the army and all of the places, the college, even in the Christian school, this has been a thread in your life all
Yeah.
the way through. When, Armand, did it become something that you had to deal with, when you had to like realize, wait a minute, I need to get some answers, I need to walk through this? Do you remember the incident that caused that to happen, to become front and center in your life, and that you had to sit down and begin to deal with it, if you will, for a lack of a better word?
Absolutely. Crystal clear like yesterday.
Yeah.
It was in 2009. I just gotten back home from college. I think it was my third year or something. And I felt so depressed. I felt so lonely. I was sitting there getting my grades back from my exams. And, I was just realizing that I didn't have any plans for summer other than being at home and feeling bored and being lonely and not having anyone to hang around with. I need to do something about this before it's too late.
Yeah.
I was 24. Yes, I was. And keep in mind, this was before social media was a thing. There wasn't any smartphones. I think Facebook had just started to become a thing, but we all were using Facebook on our laptops, not in our phones.
Yeah.
Insta, TikTok, Snapchat, I don't think those existed or I don't even think Twitter was around at that time. I don't think.
Yeah.
So it was way before the age of social media in that regard. But yeah, I was thinking that, and I was sitting there saying to myself that, look, I need to do something about this because this loneliness thing isn't going away and it's only getting worse and worse. So that's why I decided to embark on a journey and defeat my loneliness in college. So when I got back from, when I got back to college after the summer holidays was over and so on, and the fall semester started, I started signing up for different classes. I started playing the guitar. I didn't even know how to play the guitar, right? But I just started to play the guitar or taking guitar classes because I wanted to meet other people. I connected with a lot of people in my class because obviously, I had a huge class and there was always a party. There was always some sort of gathering or event going on. So I started going to these events. And I also started to connect and to talk to the people in my class, right? Just, hey, what have you been up to this summer? What have you been doing? What's worked for you? What hasn't worked for you? Whatever, blah, blah, blah. What do you think about this place? All those sorts of minuscule things, right?
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, and I also picked up scuba diving as a hobby. I picked up and taekwondo. I did all sorts of stuff. Sprayed out. Fanned out, did a lot of stuff. And so I want to say after a good year or maybe a year or a half, I had like 4 or 5 different social circles that I could, jump from or jump in between. And oftentimes it would have happened that on a Saturday night, I would get 3 or 4 invitations to several parties. So I had to start at one party, then stay there for 2 hours, then go to another party, and then go to a third party. And people would get upset and go like, why are you leaving so early? I mean, you need to stay here. Well, I got other people to go to. And once again, this was before the age of social media. We were sitting on our Nokia phones. Remember the Nokia phones? The one where you could play Snake? I was texting, like this on my Nokia phone and, arranging deals and whatever, and going from events to events. And that was essentially what broke my loneliness and defeated my loneliness. It was as simple as going out there and connecting with other people and talking to other people and just doing it consistently.
Stepping in.
Yeah, really.
And I hope you guys are listening. Yeah, you have to step out from your comfort zone when you want to make changes, long-lasting changes. You have to step out from your comfort zone and begin to expand yourself. And as you begin to do that, you saw the changes in his life, and he's talking about how he had invitations from all over the place, and everything changed. And so you will have to do the very same thing. All of you guys that are in a space of loneliness, we're going to provide everything for you. Sometimes you just need to talk to someone as well to encourage you to do that. And we'll give you guys access to him so you could do that. And please get in touch with him. So here you are, because I want to know now, how did that lead to you beginning to become one where you're open yourself to others, to have them, to serve them? As you said, you talked about serving them and helping them through their loneliness. How did that come about? That you began to walk into that space of serving others?
Very good question. As I started doing that way back in 09, 10, 11, some 14, 15 years ago, I decided right there and then that that would be my mission, actually, to help other people do the same. Because if I can do it, then why can't you do it? Why can't we all do it? But
Yeah.
there were no grounds for doing so at that time. Social media, like I said, wasn't a thing. It wasn't a thing that I'm connecting with someone who lives in Thailand, and I'm doing a
Yeah.
podcast.
Yeah.
I don't even think
Yeah.
podcasts were around at that time. Maybe they were, but they were very, very small, and they
Yeah.
weren't big in numbers. And like I said, there was hardly any ground for doing it. But I just made it my mission to do the following. Every single place I would move to, because I needed to move because of work and so on, I would make
Yeah.
it my mission to connect locally or connect with the locals, whatever that means. Joining the local scuba diving club, partaking in events and trips and whatever, saying yes to invitations, and
Yeah.
basically just doing something, even if it's scary, doing something that spooks me, but that's necessary to grow. I mean, I know a lot of people who could sit there and talk about this very thing, but they would have an issue with this podcast. You want to know why? Because they would need to speak in a second language. They would need to
Yeah.
speak in English instead of
Yeah.
Norwegian, right? Even that could be a
Yeah.
barrier for some, right?
Yeah.
And speaking of languages and so on, I mean, I don't know how things work in Thailand. I've only been to Thailand once, and I just stayed there for a couple of weeks, so I can't really speak to Thailand as a whole and that sort of culture. But I want to say that nearly every country on earth is more open and friendly than Norway and the Scandinavian countries, because it's a very, very cold and closed culture. It's kind of like you have to go through a trial of fire and ice and climb, I don't know, 15,000, a mountain that's 15,000 feet tall, and then you get to befriend your Scandinavian. That's what
Yeah.
it was like. Yeah. Because
Wow.
I mean, I've been to America several times. I've been to the UK also, and other places, and people are always more open and friendly and inviting over there. But
Yeah.
in return, if I may add, I believe that these relationships that you can foster and grow, especially here in the Nordic part of the world, they're more profound and long
Yeah.
lasting as long as you get in. But it's so difficult to even get in. And actually, what we're talking about now, I don't know how things are in America and the UK, in Thailand and so on, but the loneliness epidemic is a huge discussion currently. It's a huge
Yeah.
public discourse currently in the Norwegian media landscape, and yet the solution is right before your very eyes. Just walk out the door
Yeah.
and talk to someone. It's not more difficult than that. Just
Yeah.
talk to someone. Just open up and
Yeah.
give them an excuse to laugh and to have fun. Obviously, I'm biased. I'm a Pentecostal Christian. I go to church.
Yeah.
That's fine. So go to church, but leave all the religious stuff at church, please.
Yeah.
Don't bring up anything. Don't bring up politics for the goodness sake, right? Don't bring up
Yeah.
any negative stuff. Just give people a reason to laugh or to have fun.
Yeah.
Whatever. Simple, basic stuff. That's it. It's really that
Guys,
simple and easy. And yet so many people
I,
are overcomplicating it.
yeah, it is, again, for those that are listening to us, and I know that you have the fearfulness, and what's really keeping you guys from doing anything is that fear. You're afraid of rejection, you're afraid of many things. And you've been listening to Orman's story, and he was in a small town, guys, a couple of hundred people, and being shunned by his peers, if you will. And we said it earlier, and he made a statement that he's still here. And so he's familiar with what fearfulness is happening within your mind. And we're going to provide everything again for you guys to have access to him, because it's very important that you begin to step out. Because he said it's very simple, just step out. Just step out, get in touch with him. That's stepping out. Step out and get in touch with him, and he'll be able to help you to walk with you, hold your hands as you begin to do the other part of the stepping out within your neighborhood, your area, and so forth, so that you can walk through this loneliness. As he said, it is an epidemic. Came on, it's all over the world right now. And so I'm glad that he's here, because it's something that I am going to, we're going to do our best to promote him also in our social media, to let people know that there's someone out there that has been through it and is available for them to have access to. Harmon, I want to thank you, man, for coming to Threads of Enlightenment. This has been a good one. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I've been enjoying this. And yeah, this was a good one. Amazing.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for tuning in to Threads of Enlightenment with Ken Primus. Hopefully you're now feeling more empowered to overcome the challenges in your life, whatever they may be. Share that inspiration with others by telling them about this podcast, rating it, and of course, remember to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. For more connection, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram by searching for Threads of Enlightenment. Until next time, stay enlightened.